welcome to the 19th episode of the Pirate Rugby Pod. We have now passed 400 YouTube subscribers, and our next stop is 500. We also had our biggest ever week for audio downloads, so thank you to everyone for all your support. If you like what we do, please like, share, and subscribe. Comments also give us a big boost, and we always respond to everyone.
A reminder that you can find us on Twitter and sign up to our free Substack. Links for both are below. If you follow us, you'll get updates every time we drop a new piece of content, whether it be a podcast, a video, or a long form article. But now I shall introduce our wonderful guest. I'm sure that plenty of you will know her from Twitter/Blue Sky now, and her jet-setting cosmopolitan lifestyle, where she's not afraid to tell the biggest personalities on rugby Twitter exactly what she thinks of them. It is the one and only Catherine Kavanagh. How are you?
I'm great. It's so lovely to be here. I have such time for both of you. I think we three first met on Jay Craig Scoops over the summer when we were talking about the World Cup, which, let's face it, none of us wants to talk about now.
No.
Not we three anyway. No. So it's great to be here. Thank you for having me on.
It's absolutely our pleasure. So let's jump straight into our moments of the week. Ender, mate, you can go first. What was your moment?
I struggled to pick a moment, but we all know that Mack Hansen was back for Connacht, so I was always going to pick a Mack Hansen moment. And he had a brilliant game, and I'll talk about it more later on. But in the 69th minute, Connacht had a ruck in the middle of the pitch, inside their own half. Blade threw it to Hanrahan. Hanrahan took the ball up, drew his man, passed it to Hansen, and Hansen spotted a gap between Deegan and I think it was Russell who was on the wing. Broke through, created a perfect 2-on-1, gave the pass, and Kilgannon ran in close to under the posts. And it was just a brilliant display of what we've kind of been missing since he's been out since the beginning of this season, this URC season. And it was just one of many moments that he had in the game were just pretty special. And yeah, like there was a full house at the sports ground for the derby against Leinster, and the place erupted with that score. And I think it's just exactly what Connacht need, especially with Bordeaux on the horizon this Friday. But yeah, one of many great moments that he had this weekend. What about yourself, Hugh? What was your moment of the week?
So I was at the rugby in person this week. I went to Cardiff to take in Cardiff versus the Scarlets for the second time this season. And I was with my friend and fellow podcaster, Harley Worthy, Dr. Harley Worthy, to give her his full title. He took the day off. Yeah, he took the day off treating patients and saving lives to come and attend the rugby with me. And it got to half time and we were walking down in the Arms Park to go and get a snack. And Harley turns to me and goes, "I swear I just seen Richard Hammond." I was like, "What? Yeah, Richard Hammond off Top Gear." And he's like, "Yeah, I swear." And I was like, "I don't think you have, mate." And he's like, "No, I know I haven't, because why would he be here?" But he looked exactly like Richard Hammond. And then we get home, we check on Twitter. It was Richard Hammond. Richard Hammond was, for some reason, at Cardiff Arms Park. He was there, I think, supporting Kevin Sinfield on his mega super duper marathon thing. And Cardiff were posting Twitters of him in the crowd. So turns out Harley wasn't going demented due to the severe cold that we were standing in. He actually did see the one and only Richard Hammond. So that was a bit of a moment for me. Anyway, Catherine, what was your moment?
I would talk about the Leinster win, which I think we snatched from the Jaws defeat in Connacht, but I think the moment belongs very much with Enda. It was amazing to watch Hansen back in full form. Like he's the least physically equipped rugby player in the world, but he's really one of the world's great personalities and great players at the moment, and we're so lucky he's ours, although temporarily he obviously belongs to the west of Ireland. And it was great to see him back and on flying form. And I will gloss quickly past the result that I know Enda is extremely upset about, and to say, sorry, my friend, I'm not sure we deserve it.
Should we get into the big news of the week then? So
yeah,
the first bit that I think we need to talk about is we now have the second official from the World Cup final has stepped away, this time just from international rugby. He will be continuing at club level, but Tom Foley has announced that he no longer plans to take control of international games. He's stepping away. I think he said an indefinite break is the way he phrased it. I think, when it comes to, in his statement, he referenced a lot of the abuse and the threats that he got off the back of that, which was ridiculous in my opinion, because and it was the same with Wayne Barnes. I thought both of them had exemplary games, and I couldn't fault any of the decisions that any of them made. But when it comes to the discussion about why these have happened, the tendency is for pundits and journalists to start turning their aim towards the fans and saying, "Oh, these fans are so terrible. Look at what they do." And yes, the extreme ends of the abuse will come from the fans. But Catherine, I think is it fair to say that there are people working within rugby, whether that be coaches or particularly loud voices in the media, who enable this kind of thing? Would you say?
Yes. There's nothing more poisonous than somebody with a microphone and with free reign, and I suppose an interlocutor with no power of reply. And we have seen this echoed, and I think for me, it really began probably during the lockdown periods. So we're all familiar with what Erasmus did in the season of 2021 when the Lions were in town and releasing home videos made clearly from his garage and that pen gimmick that he had. That to me unleashed the gates of anyone with a microphone and opinion who felt they were enabled to launch personal attacks on people. In some stage over the past couple of years, we have lost direction as a sport, and we have looked to our rugby teams perhaps to give us solace and comfort during lockdowns when there was nothing else to do. And we have probably elevated any kind of sport, but particularly rugby for some weird reason, to somewhere beyond the pantheon of just a great day out with friends and a chance to support your team or support your province. It has stopped being that wonderful community bonding leisure, albeit a very expensive leisure hobby for all of us. And it's become something more. And I think culpability lies on probably three separate fronts. I am very loath to blame social media because that is the quick refrain of every pundit with a microphone and opinion, and it deflects criticism because, let's face the people using social media in many cases are like people like we three, spend a fortune and give up our annual leave and, sacrifice other things we'd like to do with our lives because we're going to buy big expensive World Cup tickets or go to Six Nations matches. I think it lies with the World Rugby governing body, which has failed its officials. And it's failed its officials by not providing more clarity on what decisions were made and stopping the baying mob at the gates from, making their own conclusions. It's also deliberately not stood by its officials. It has not come out publicly at any stage and talked about the need to dial back the rhetoric. And it also lies with the media, who themselves increasingly in recent years have begun to target their ire towards players not performing or players not interpreting decisions correctly or players choosing to disregard laws they don't like and blaming that on the referees. There is also the third case, which is the idiots with their opinions. They've always existed. They are not the driving force here. There are people in positions of power and authority who have allowed this happen, and it's happened very suddenly. I don't know if you guys think that's unfair or think there's more to it.
Yeah. What do you think, Enda, mate?
I think you're definitely touching on something there that's accurate, because it doesn't feel like the rugby I grew up watching, or like even pre-pandemic. It didn't feel like this. It didn't feel like players like Owen Farrell were coming out saying they're taking time away to focus on their mental health because of the amount of stuff, criticism and abuse they've gotten online. It's a horrible situation to be in. And the worst thing about it, I think, for me, is that I don't know really where we're going to go as a sport. Like, is it just going to become more and more like other sports, like maybe football, where we just expect abuse now? And we've Ugo Monye coming out about with racism, remarks being made to him at the Exeter Chief game a couple of weeks ago. Like, I don't know where we go, and it's definitely a sad state of affairs. And it's just really sad, like a ref to be sitting, not even on the pitch, and he's made this decision because of abuse he's gotten for just doing his job, and he wasn't even. It's sad to hear, I think. And I don't really know where we go from here. Like, I don't know what the solution is here. And I think, Catherine, you made a great point. Like, it's so easy just to blame social media and the lack of regulation. Like, it's never been this bad. Social media's been around a good while now, and it seemed to have gotten to a really bad stage now. And I just don't know where we're going as a sport and what we're going to do about it. I'm sick. Like I just find the criticism. Like we tried to make a point on this pod not to criticize refs and not to focus on poor decisions because it's just so boring and nobody wants to listen or watch that. And yeah, I just wish there was less of a focus on a ref in a game. Like whenever you're watching certain games or you're watching certain international teams or club teams play, you just know that the same people are going to come out and just moan about the refereeing decisions against their team, and it's just such lazy. Like it's such a lazy way of watching sport and commentating on sport. Like just focus on your team, focus on where they went wrong, focus on the other team where they went well, like where they did well. I don't know.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's exactly it. Lazy is becoming a buzzword of our podcast. Without Hugh blames ITV becoming a weekly bit, during the World Cup, there would be great games. There would be games that were tri-fests, and there would be a card given out in the first half, and the entirety of the halftime analysis from ITV would be dedicated to the refereeing and the refereeing decisions. So exactly as you alluded to there, and we have almost self-imposed, we don't do ref chat. Squidge Rugby does the same. Maybe that needs to be the rule for like someone like Austin Healy on BT or something who seems to just live for refereeing chat. Maybe it just needs to be a rule that if you're on co-coms or you're doing the punditry for a rugby game, you don't do ref chat. And if the referee makes a decision, you go, okay, the referee's called that. Or if there's a replay that shows they might have got it wrong, you might say something like, "Oh, it's a bit tight there, but the referee's made his decision. You got to respect it." I mean, do you not remember all the times that those clips of players going, "Yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir," with like Chris Robshaw, and they would always go viral, and it's all rugby values. What happened to that? So I think that exactly that kind of thing should be applied to pundits potentially as well, and that would help quieten it down a bit. Catherine, did you want to come in there?
Yeah, sure. I think that's a really strong point. I would like to see pundits have some accountability. And I think some of it stems from the ultimate slew of law changes, rules. Do you hear me? Law changes we've had in the past 4 or 5 years. I don't think many of the people who are commentating at the moment, because it is the same faces across different channels, certainly in the UK and in Ireland, I'm not sure how many of them are up to date on the current laws. And you hear it again and again from the same people, and I'm not going to name names on this podcast because that's not what we're about here, but I think you hear the same thing again and again. You hear various different pundits talk about, oh, there's no intent. The law of intent was never a law in the first place.
It's not a law.
Possible to police. It is completely subjective. And I think in the absence of people actually sitting down and going through the online app that World Rugby has produced with the laws and keeping up to date with changes, I think it is easier to blame the person who calls time. And like I was struck by it during, I think it was the Ireland-New Zealand match in Paris, which I'd rather forget, quite frankly. But I remember the camera constantly trained on Andrew Porter, right? And the look of abject fury in the guy's face as he's marched back 5 the whole time where the scrum was reset or he was penalised. And I remember yelling at one stage to the people around me, like, why isn't he changing his behaviour? Barnes is not going to change his interpretation of the ruling. It is up to the player and up to the pundits and up to the media, never mind ourselves as fans, to ensure we're equipped to know why these people who are more qualified than any of us will ever be are making the adjudications, because invariably they're found right in the post-match.
Yeah.
And look at someone like Tom Foley, who would objectively be the number 2 successor to Wayne Barnes after his retirement. And that's a very exalted position for any referee. I mean, you want to referee the big tests and be the referee of the World Cup finals or the big Lions matches. To have him voluntarily give that up and walk away from a very lucrative, glittering international career speaks volumes for where the game is at and where perhaps World Rugby has left them as officials. I think there has to be a degree of culpability towards them too.
Yeah, I completely agree. Kind of sort of taking on a tangent from there, and maybe if we get all of the doom and gloom out of the way as early as possible before we talk about Connacht, the class action lawsuit, which is another thing that certain pundits took it upon themselves to discuss this weekend. We have seen yet more players join up with it. So we've seen, I believe, I don't know if it's new news, but Gavin Henson has joined it as well, and Colin Charvis. I'm not sure how new news that is that they've joined up with it. And then we've had former Wales international Andrew Coombs also confirmed his diagnosis, and don't think it's announced that he's joined the lawsuits, but that this roster of players who have joined that action is getting longer and longer, and it's starting to become a bit daunting if it wasn't already. Enda, does this all end in tears? Because the payout that these guys are going to get, presumably, I mean, I don't think this is going to be over quickly by any stretch of the imagination, but is there a doomsday coming for rugby without being incredibly overdramatic?
Who knows? Like, I have no idea where this is going to go. Like, you do hear stories about World Rugby knowing, like, when there should have been longer stand down periods, all of that kind of stuff. It'll all come out over the next God knows how long. Who knows where it's going to? It could absolutely destroy the sport. The sport, I should say. I don't know. Like, there have been a couple of comments out there about, people maybe doing this to maybe make some money, or I don't know. I like reading about Andrew Coombs. When I saw that story, I wasn't too familiar with him, and I just Googled him really quickly, and I discovered that he was 39 years old, and to be diagnosed with dementia at 39 years old, I have no idea what that must feel like. So I think that kind of just reiterates the importance of this whole thing to me, and how we need to take it very seriously. And obviously we've been forced to as a sport because of this massive litigation, but I think as fans and as pundits and journalists out there, we need to, and again, this comes back to the referee point, when we see these high shots, when we see these controversial calls, I think we just need to bloody well get on with it and accept them, so that behavior changes, and we get these hits out of the game as much as we can. We're never going to rule them out. But it also is linked to another point which we're going to discuss later, which is the calendar. Like, I follow Progressive Rugby. I have a lot of time for them on Twitter, and one of them, like, they don't want to see the demise of rugby. They want to see rugby prevail, and they want to see it succeed into the future. And one of their biggest arguments is that we just need less games, and I think that's the key for me. And then that's why I'm just struggling at the moment to see where rugby's going to be, say, after this litigation, or in 5 years. I honestly, after the chat we had with Kalon last week, I don't know if there's a future for the Heineken Cup, especially if we're going to amalgamate the leagues and everything. If we are going to seriously put in place, a limit of say 20 games per player, where are we going to go? I think leagues will suffer, competitions will suffer, cups will suffer. But I think it's unfortunately inevitable. The more you read about this stuff, and the more you read that you can't prevent it, and it's the subconcussive hits, it's not just the concussions. So the only way to combat that is to have less games. It's the only way, and obviously in conjunction with really going hard on high hits, and taking them out of the game as much as possible. But yeah, like this whole, like, who knows where this whole litigation is going to go. I don't think it's going to lead to the demise of rugby. Some unions might struggle to get out of it. Will World Rugby have enough money left over to bail them out? Like, who knows? Hopefully that's not the case, but it's gonna. Yeah, there are going to be some tough articles coming out, as there have been since Steve Thompson came out a couple of years ago.
Yeah, Catherine, what's your view? And are we looking at a world potentially in the future where either rugby is not the same presence as it is now, or it's a fundamentally different game to play, perhaps?
I don't think the game itself will alter too much. The point you make about progressive rugby is really valid, actually, in terms of how they want to see it develop and see it policed. I would suspect there'd be two things. I'm not sure the class action in its current form will succeed. I think there's probably enough litigation power behind World Rugby to try and mitigate. I think insurance will become excessive, and that's actually what will stop its development and growth, particularly for tier 2 nations who will not be able to afford the insurance policies that are needed. And I think we probably need to see, extended squads. Like, we had a team with 33 players per nation in the World Cup. To me, that was a nonsense. That's what a 23 plus a few leftovers for 7 or 8 or 9 weeks, depending on your longevity. So I think it's too low as a number, and you need probably, yes, 20 games per player seems I suppose to my untrained brain, about right. I think the Irish do it right, and they do it on a rotating season, the same as everyone else does. But there's always going to be key assets that are exposed. And you would look at people like our recently retired captain. We look at Owen Farrell, who himself has been the victim of this, the kind of ongoing concussive stuff over time. The guys who are playing the most kind of combative positions, the guys who are targeted, there needs to be an acknowledgement that there needs to be more rotation in those positions. And perhaps that is the way the game will go, to try and mitigate. That said, you've probably guessed by now, I'm not a big fan of World Rugby and its current guys. I think ultimately the way forward will lie with how they respond to it. And if they retreat behind serious litigation and KC silks that cost 10 grand a day, like your man is Richard Smith that England had on speed dial, that kills the game completely. But there's probably, I think, enough momentum and enough solid thought in player welfare globally. Certainly in Ireland there is, definitely in New Zealand there is. Hard to tell with America these days, but there are enough solid people in the game to make a serious voice for it. But I think larger squads is probably the only way forward.
I have to say that's a little bit scary to hear from a Welsh fan's point of view, given what's going on in our game at the moment. So, yeah, I think they're all excellent points. So, moving on to something a bit more positive, we talk about progression in rugby, and perhaps the area of the game where nearly all of the progressive and positive news comes from these days, the women's game. So, there's been news that has come out today about the confirmed participation and format of the new Celtic Challenge. So I've spent a fair bit of this afternoon researching this. So I'm just going to read out what I've been able to find out, because I'll be very honest, it's been difficult to find out details about this. And I'll explain to you guys exactly what it has been that's been so difficult. So it was piloted last year as a concept. So Celtic Challenge, it's 6 teams, 2 from Wales, 2 from Scotland, 2 from Ireland. It was trialled last year with just 3 teams, 1 from each. So this is an expanded version of that. The 6 teams are from Scotland, you've got Edinburgh and Glasgow. From Ireland, you've got the Wolfhounds and the Clovers. I believe the Clovers are a mix of Munster and Connacht. Is that right? And then the Wolfhounds will be Leinster and Ulster. And then you've got Brython Thunder and Gwalia Lightning, which are the Welsh teams. So Thunder are East and North Wales, and Lightning are, Thunder are North and West Wales. God, I forgot. Don't tell anybody I got that wrong. Yeah. And Lightning are Central and East Wales. So Lightning will play in Cardiff, and Thunder will play either in Parky Scarlets or up in Conway Bay, which is where RGC, the Welsh Premiership team, are based. I'll come back to an interesting point about the Welsh sides in a moment. So this tournament is going to be played between December the 29th and February the 3rd. The format is confusing. So they've made a bit of a song and dance about the format, but it's 5 regular rounds and then 3 playoff rounds. And if I just read the actual wording of it here. The competition will adopt new format, which will be made of 5 rounds before 3 double-header playoff rounds to determine who will be this season's Celtic Challenge champions. I, for the life of me, can't work out what 3 double-header playoff round means, because with 6 teams, so double-header is 2 games, right? So that would be 2 teams not playing. That's only 4 teams. And then, so is it going to be like one of those ones where the quarterfinal happens between like third down to 6th, and the 2 top teams don't play, they get a bye, but that's not explicitly stated. It says that these double headers are going to be hosted in each of the participating nations. So it'll be 1 double header in Wales, Scotland and Ireland, but they don't know what order they're going to be played in yet. But that leaves the possibility that one of those rounds will be played in a country where neither of the teams participating are from that country, potentially. So it's really a bit confusing, and we're hot off the back of the WXV1 at least, which had a confusing format and scheduling where there was 8 teams in WXV1, but they didn't all play each other. They only played some of the games. And why is there only 5 regular rounds where they play each other once rather than a full league round, double round robin style? Now, the answer to that might be that this tournament is funded by World Rugby. It's not funded by the participating unions. And despite having Edinburgh and Glasgow in it, as far as I understand, it has no affiliation to the URC. So this would be purely World Rugby pumping money into the women's game to help with the development. And it does seem like that these teams are going to be development teams. So Wales held open trials to get picked for these teams. It's not like a select of players from teams that already exist. So yeah,
Yes,
so it does
there
seem
are
to be
amalgamated, certainly in the case
Yeah.
of the Irish and the Welsh as well. Yeah, which is a nonsense in itself. I mean, let's face it. Yeah, and
Yeah.
no sponsor that I can make out. So yeah, it
So that-
smacks of like big organizational capacity to give the birds some ball, right?
Yes,
Sorry.
yes, I think that's a good way of putting it. So I think one of the reasons that it might be a truncated format might just be because they don't want to put in the money to pay for the extra games, basically. So like I said, finding out actual details about this has been incredibly difficult because it was been announced by each of the three unions, and they've all got copy and paste press releases announcing it, and World Rugby announced it about a week ago without the main details. The interesting thing for me as a Welsh rugby fan that stood out to it is it kind of gives a bit of an insight into how the Welsh Rugby Union might be wanting to redraw regional rugby if it had the chance. So there was talk a few years ago about Scarlets and Ospreys merging and a new region coming up in the north of Wales. So not many people realise that North Wales is actually represented as part of the Scarlets region, which might not make sense geographically to some people. That is actually how it works. So the Thunder, which are the West Wales and North Wales region, play in black and red, which is an amalgamation of the Ospreys and the Scarlets kits, while as the Lightning play in blue and yellow, which is an amalgamation of Cardiff and Dragons kits. So I kind of thought, and Josh Gardner mentioned this on Blue Sky as well, is like, oh God, don't tell that mad guy from Ponty that this is kind of amalgamated regional thing. I think it gives it a fascinating insight into how, if you were to start from scratch with regional rugby, how the WRU might go about it. But it's way too late for that now. So like I said, this doesn't appear to be affiliated with the URC. We heard suggestions that a URC women's tournament might be in the works. I don't think this is that, but we don't know yet. So, Catherine, yeah, what's your reaction to this news? Is it another positive step by the women's game, or do you think there's something a bit half-baked about it, maybe?
It's completely half-baked, isn't it? I mean, no one can make any sense of it, including people like you who've actually done the research. It is great to see female players get the exposure and get the competitive fixtures that they need to grow and develop. But I'd be more interested to understand funding and backing. Like, there's no sponsor, so where does that fit, and how much of it is a bit of tokenism? Because it doesn't make any sense. You need competitions. You need Jeopardy, for example. You need competitions to make sense and there to be a solid playing base. And if you try and amalgamate, as Enda will tell you, two Irish provinces, you don't really get the buy-in, like that feral provincial buy-in that we have, and the same thing with the Welsh regions and what you just mentioned.
Yeah, I think there will be some amount of goodwill from some areas that will just be saying, no, we just need to back it out of doing the right thing and feeling it's like it's the right thing. But I don't know, Enda, sorry, go on.
Rugby is good rugby to watch, isn't it? You know, it's played at a skillful level. It's great rugby to watch when it's played well, and you know the names we see in front of us suggest it will be played well. But to what you were saying, I just don't know how it gets the public interest at a time when Six Nations is back in the mix as well.
Yeah, I think
Well, exactly. So
hopefully with Rugby
sorry,
Pass TV, they might do the right thing in terms of broadcasting it, but there haven't been, like, I'm sure I don't think you noticed any of that information in your research, did you, about what's going to happen in terms of broadcasting? Will they even look to? Yeah,
I think it might end up being on YouTube, or S4C might broadcast the Welsh games, but that is, I think, probably speculation at this point. The trial tournament that they did last year, I didn't even know it existed until I read about the new one this year, to be completely honest. So
yeah.
it's yet another truncated format under which rugby can't seem to get the hang of formatting competitions at the moment.
Yeah, look, and it seems like there's an awful lot of rugby on as well. Like especially with WXV, I think like the numbers at both attendance and viewing figures for that were quite low, which is really disappointing. But I guess at least they're trying something, and hopefully this is all going in the right direction. And there might be a bit of pain up front, but I just want to highlight as well. I think I really Rugby Pass TV kind of released some figures recently, and like it seems like a good few people have signed up for the service, and it's kind of something we've been calling out for a long time, having a rugby streaming service that you don't pay for and that broadcasts those maybe competitions that wouldn't be able to secure a broadcast deal with any of the big players. And it's widely available. I think that needs to be applauded. Like, cause like WXB, all of those games were available for free, which I think is brilliant. And like we see the Sevens tournament on this weekend. I'm not a big fan of Sevens. I don't watch it, but again, that was made available on the app everywhere. So I think having that platform is going to be part of growing the women's game. And if they get the more and more games they get on that, and the more, I guess awareness that even is a thing. Because I bet you a lot of people, a lot of rugby fans don't even know what Rugby Pass TV is. And the more awareness they grow about that, the better it will be for women's sport. But yeah, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, let's talk about some actual games that happened. So I'm going to break with tradition and mention a non-Welsh or Irish game first. I'm going to talk about Bulls versus Sharks. So a huge event, one of the biggest games in the URC. And the Bulls made a real statement. They absolutely took apart their local South African rivals in front of a big crowd at the stadium. I think it was well into the mid 20,000s for attendance, which is great to see. And a hot day again fell victim to the camera was facing the side of the stadium, which was bathed in sunlight, and it is a heat wave in South Africa, so no one was sat there. So it looked like it was empty, but there wasn't. There was 20 odd thousand people sat on the other stand that the camera wasn't pointing at. So, people. Anyway, I've done that rant too many times already. But it was a big game, and the Bulls, we tipped them to do incredibly well this season, and they are not disappointing anybody. And like I said, that Sharks team was packed full of Uretzabeths and every Springbok you could want. And the Bulls were like, yeah, cool, and just absolutely destroyed them, playing some great rugby and just formidable. I can't see them losing at home for the entirety of this season, and I think they're going to be there or thereabouts come finals time in the URC, to be honest. So that was the exciting game. I'm now going to quickly run through the Welsh regions, and then I will let you two get into the meat and the bones of the Connacht versus Leinster game. So, like I said, I was at Cardiff Arms Park to take in Cardiff versus Scarlets. A win for the Scarlets, a morale-boosting win, but I'd say from a Scarlets point of view, a lot of the problems that we've had were still very much present and correct. Our set piece got taken apart, both line out and scrum, and our kicking game still has not made an appearance this season. So Cardiff managed to draw us into a set piece game in the first 20 and a kicking game in the third 20 and won both of those periods. But we just ran everything. And Johan Lloyd in particular just was like, yeah, no, give me the ball, and was just making breaks from his own 22 all over the place. Cardiff down a man after losing Ellis Jenkins, which I think was a fair one. But if anybody ever has the chance to attend a rugby match in Cardiff, I'd really go for it because it's a great day out. The locations, both Cardiff Arms Park and the Principality, are right in the middle of the city. There's you literally
Times, brilliant.
you fall into a pub on the way out, and just don't go when it's -2 like I did, and it will be, like I said, a great day. So no excuse for not getting out and just enjoying the rugby. Other two results: Ospreys in a low-scoring game against Benetton. Benetton won. I think it's a lot closer than a lot of Osprey fans were fearing, though, because Benetton went full strength and Osprey sent the kids. Toby Booth said it wasn't the kids, but it was. And yeah, I think it will be another one of those results that we look back at the end of the season and say, you know what, that wasn't so bad. But Benetton racking up the wins, and I still have them down to be in the playoffs come the end of the season. And then finally, Dragons took a hefty beating off the Lions down in South Africa in their final total game. You looked at the result, and I think it was something like 49-22, something like that. And you think, oh, that's not so bad. Kept it under 50. And then you see that the Lions had a player sent off in the first half. And you go, oh, okay, maybe it's not so good. And then you watch the highlights and talk about gift-wrapped tries. The Dragons just gave. I think Jamie broke it down on Wrap and said, yeah, it was 5 out of the Lions' 6 tries came from knock-ons from the Dragons, where the Lions player just picked it up and ran it in. It's not really good enough, to be honest. And Dragons fans are very much sick of hearing the same old excuses and same old lines that come out from the captain and the coach at the end of the game, like, oh, we need to improve our accuracy. We need to be playing at this level, blah, blah, blah. Well, how many times can we learn this lesson, guys? But anyway, Scarlets are now top of the Welsh Shield, and that's all that matters. So that's out of the way. Ender, call the police. There was a robbery in Galway. Tell me about
it. Yeah. Look, it was a really tough watch at the end, but I thought Connacht did. Like, I think Connacht, despite I think they're in 8th now, at the moment, just behind Benetton, or sorry, just behind Ulster, and I really feel like they should be higher in the table. Like, despite this loss, and I know it wasn't the Leinster's, I know it wasn't Leinster's first team, and it was, yeah, I just really do think like Connacht are in a good position, and they're playing really good rugby. They're throwing more passes than any other team. They're offloading. They do kick. They kick quite a lot, but they kick smartly. They keep the ball in play. They don't just kick for lineouts. And like, if you look at this performance, Connacht were down quite early on, and they came back, and a lot of that was down to Hansen. But also, like, if you look at Connacht's 3 scores within this game, they all started from within their own half. And I think that just shows you how exciting they are, and the type of players that they have, and the type of game plan that they have. And it just shows that they're willing to run it from anywhere, but not necessarily like their own 22. Like, if you like, Connacht under Pat Lam would, famously run from anywhere, like in terms of like their 22 or like close to their line, whereas Connacht at the moment under Wilkins are a bit smarter than that. They do run the ball from inside their own half, but they do play smart rugby. They do clear the lines when they need to. They've got an excellent scrum half in Caelan Blade, who's able to box kick quite well. Connacht's scrum was very dominant in this game. Like, Tadhg Furlong, like towards the end of the game, Tadhg Furlong came on and Cian Healy came on, and Connacht were just winning. Like, there was reset after reset, but eventually the ref kind of gave in and just gave a couple of penalties to Connacht. I think he was dead right, but like, they were completely dominant in that facet of the game. And I think that's a really strong point. And they were quite good at stealing the line out, opposition line out, which is what they've been good at all season. But in this game, the line out just capitulated. It was so frustrating. I think there were 5 losses in a row or something. And unfortunately, in the 81st minute, when Connacht had done really well, won a scrum penalty against Leinster, only a couple of minutes left on the clock, kicked the ball to the sideline, and then the ball went in. Yeah, crooked throw on the line out, and Leinster, of course, run in. Really, really frustrating. But yeah, they just think they do need to figure some things out, but I just don't want to be overly negative. Like, I think this is one that Connacht probably deserve to win. Like, they just need to cut out some of these silly mistakes. Like, I remember there were camps in their own line during the first half, and they did really well to hold out Leinster, and then they eventually won a penalty, but that penalty was reversed because Hurley Langton, during a scrap, grabbed somebody else's scrum cap, and then the ref saw it and reversed the penalty, and that was really, like, that was a really tough moment for Connacht. And then similarly, was it against the Bulls, where they had a chance to go for their 4th try just to get that bonus point, but of course the penalty was reversed because there was back chat to the ref. Like, stupid things like that, they really need to get out of their game. But overall, I think that they're definitely going in the right direction. Like, line out aside, this game, I think the line out's been good this season. The scrum's excellent. They've got some absolute superstars. They've got Mac Hansen back, 11 defenders beaten, 143 meters gained, 2 try assists, 3 clean breaks. Like, he's a superstar. And now we've got Bundy coming back this Friday as well against Bordeaux. So it's not all doom and gloom, but it's a game they should have won, and it wasn't Leinster's first team, was far from it. But the foundations are there, I think, to go pretty far this season. What are your thoughts? I've been going on a bit there, Catherine, but what are your thoughts from a Leinster perspective?
I think you're harsh on your own team, right? I think this team kind of gave up its big stars to the World Cup. They're only just back and assimilated, and sure, we're missing Bundy. Hansen, I was talking across there. Hansen is debuting at full back on Saturday night and looked like a man possessed. So it's a weird thing to watch Connacht over the years. I certainly well remember, like it was yesterday, the 2016 Celtic Cup final, or the Celtic League final in Edinburgh, when you absolutely hammered us. And I think they're kind of 2 steps away from being the psychological killer team, right? And all that needs is a bit of guidance and your frontliners back. and in command and control. I'd rather not focus too much on my own team stealing victory at the death, because I think that was a blip. I was really concerned. And it's a concern that's carried over from the World Cup as to line out and set piece and scrum. I just think something has gone wrong. I'm not sure that Leo is the person with the steady hand on the tiller. It's not really his job to do that stuff. He's the overall, the executive, and the DOR needs to take responsibility. And of course, that person has been absent and has just arrived back after a month-long bus tour of South Africa with a trophy. So, I think our chickens are coming home to roost much faster than we expect. And of course, looking forward to Sunday. We play La Rochelle in La Rochelle. I'll be flipping amazed if we come away from that without only losing bonus point, let alone anything else. And I think really you look at somebody as good and as sharp as Frawley, and perhaps now that the news today with Harry Byrne being out injured until the new year, perhaps Frawley now slots into that 10 slot that he should have occupied from probably the start of his professional career, really, at Leinster, and of course never was able to because Sexton was there ahead of him. And that maybe is the one bright spark for us, that injury, albeit really unfortunate, forces that positional shift. So we see Frawley at his pivotal best. But I think there's much more questions for me than happy answers for you, and based on what happened on Saturday. I want to ask you actually about the 4G pitch, because from the very start, on a bitterly cold night, it looked like your lads were really loving playing in that pitch, and Leinster could not get their heads around it. So how do you think that's going to pan out for you guys over the course of the season when you're at home?
I think it's going to work out really well. So this is kind of part of phase one of redeveloping the sports ground. They've put in, I know it's a small thing, but they've put in a new light system, and whenever Connacht scored, they do this light show before Connacht come out, and they turn off the lights and they're all flashing. It adds to the atmosphere. And I think then on top of that, they put in this plastic pitch, which Connacht needed. That pitch was not in it wasn't in great condition. It's not in a great location either. So I think Connacht need it, and it suits Connacht's playing style. And I don't know about you guys, but you can tell that they've invested more money than perhaps if you're looking at maybe Newcastle play or Saracens, you can almost see that, is it that rubber or plastic kind of on players' face getting stuff to the body. The Connacht pitch looks completely green. And when you see I think they've obviously spent a good bit of money on it. It looks a lot more natural. And I don't want to get into the the stats around injuries and stuff. I think we need to do more research needs to be done there. But Connacht's injury front at the moment isn't actually too bad. So it's obviously too early to read into that. But I think it's really going to suit the way Connacht play, especially when it's lash and rain. It's always going to be lash and rain. The wind is always going to be blowing in the west of Ireland. So I think it adds to the sports ground now. I think it's been positive. And I think the players have reacted well to it, and I think they've adapted well. And for me, I don't know about you, it just looks a lot more natural than other maybe plastic pitches that are out there.
Yeah, when Cardiff got theirs, the little black balls was a big thing, and it was the story was that it was just part of the new process. To be fair, I can't remember seeing it on players too much lately. Maybe a Cardiff fan might correct me, but what Cardiff did was in the first few games when they had it, they said after the game, fans, please come on the pitch, and please do come on the pitch and walk on it and get it all bedded in and things. So that was something they were doing. But yeah, it's an interesting talking point, isn't it? And the proportion of them is going up because what is it?
Ulster have done it now.
Ulster have got it, Cardiff have got it, Saracens have got it at their place. I think Edinburgh, is it
Gloucester,
Edinburgh and
Newcastle,
or both? Newcastle.
Yeah.
You're surprised Bath haven't done it because their pitch has been a disaster for however many years.
It's right next to a river.
Yeah.
Yeah,
right.
That's interesting. Can I actually make a bit of a segue here and talk about Bath for a second? Because you look at their attendances and you look at the ticket prices they're charging, and you kind of wonder what gives. They've just announced, or well, it's been leaked, that they're about to take RG Snyman from Munster. Imagine how hacked off you'd be if you're Munster, having paid for that fella's rehab for 3.5 years. Then he goes off to Bath. And he's not even their marquee signing. Finn Russell's their marquee signing. So I'd be really interested to watch that one over the course of the year. I was having a chat with Kevin Coughlin on Twitter, who's actually a really good person to follow. He's a fellow with a lot of insight into Bath, a lot of history with the club. And he was saying that they've got a new director of commercial who's come from the hotel sector, who knows how to tier and stagger pricing when seats are in demand, and they seem to be filling the stadium now at the expense perhaps of a local who's gone to watch Bath for 45 years and suddenly can't pay 70 quid for a random Saturday in November, which is what those uncovered tickets were retailing at. But they're filling that ground, and I think you'd look at that and you think, if that is the fourth club to go to the wall in the English Premiership, no surprises. But also, if they can manage to turn that around and do something and then redevelop the ground, because obviously we're talking about pitches here. I mean, I think they'll probably stick with their grass pitch, but there's big plans for that pitch.
Yeah.
Is that going to be the big talking point of the next year?
Who was it who had a pop at them? A French guy, I can't remember which club it was from, had a pop at them in the press this week and said, I don't know if it was prompted or something. You went, every time I'm not going to do the accents. Every time I go to Bath, they show me the plans and they go, look at this amazing new stadium we're going to build. And they've been showing me the plans for 25 years and it's not even started yet. And he kind of said that. So I've managed to access my notes on Bath, and this is a tangent, but we're down it now. So Bath's average attendance last year was 13,839, which is 95% capacity filled.
And they were doing very poorly as well.
They were honkingly bad.
Is that not season ticket holders buying, and they count the season ticket holders having attended even if the place is half empty? Because Leinster does that. God bless us. We do that very well.
As far as I'm aware, everybody does that.
Yeah.
So yes, probably, but it kind of adds up because on TV you can see that it is full. I've done a whole deep dive on this, and Bath is one of those ones which kind of disproves a little bit the population argument, because you say, oh yeah, you get more fans, but you're in a bigger city. It doesn't necessarily work up, because Bath is by a long way not the biggest place in England. And if you look at someone like Newcastle, they are in one of the biggest cities outside of London that hosts rugby, and yet they have the smallest attendances by a long way. So it's just parts of those pieces of context. I mean, let's be honest, Bath is a pretty posh place. Maybe the people who live there have got a bit of money. I don't know. Maybe that's a general statement.
I mean, I don't remember train links dramatically improving. The last time I was there was kind of January 2022. And like, it still took 90 minutes and cost about 100 quid to get down from Paddington to Bath. So I'd be really interested to see how they do it. And if they do finally develop that pitch, maybe it'll be a 4G, but I don't think so. I think they're going old school.
But if your partner is a non-rugby fan, it is a very easy sell to get them to go to Bath with you, because you can visit the Jane Austen Museum or something next door during the day.
No partner I've ever brought to Bath has ever gone to Jane Austen, but I'll bear that in mind for the next one I bring. How about you, Enda?
Yeah, look, I think it's I've never been to Bath, but I do think, like, for me growing up watching Bath, I've always associated them with the with a big fan base, and like, for as long as I can remember, they've always been filling that. Like, it's a pretty shocking stadium, but they always seem to get really good numbers in. Which I think is really important, because obviously at the moment, let's not beat around the bush. The reason they're doing well is because of money, and they're getting big signings. So I think whenever that money runs out, or whenever that investor just says, who I believe might be Dyson, the person behind Dyson, is that, like, for me, I don't think the English rugby model is sustainable, and I could eat, like, when he moves on, for example, what the hell happens then? So I think it's good in that respect to have that fan base who will probably be there during the tough times, just like they were last season. So I think that's really important, especially when you look at attendance figures for other clubs. But I really like to see that, like, a club that had a horrible season last year but got really good attendance. I think it shows they're obviously doing something right. And just touching back to Connacht as well, I know it was sold out and it was only 8,000 people, but the atmosphere, I think it came across on TV. Like, we spoke about this maybe on a pod or two ago. Like, it's so important having these purpose-built rugby stadiums. Like, I know the sports ground isn't purpose-built for rugby, but these small stadiums that are enclosed, the people behind it just put on a good show, and I think that's what Connacht are doing really well now at the moment. Because we want people coming to rugby games, and I think that's important. Like, and you need to improve the match day experience.
And do you see that attendances have remained consistent and in fact improved since the World Cup? Whereas I would have thought that certainly the Irish would have been so kind of desolate after the World Cup that we'd all have hated rugby.
This last week.
Yeah, it's incredible. Like, people are actually dying to watch it, and the product is brilliant. Certainly in Connacht, it's great. Do you know, on a random segue, the attendance capacity at Musgrave Park in Cork is 8,008 seats.
Oh wow.
Yeah. 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 And they fill
And
it.
they sold it out for the Glasgow game, which is brilliant. Just adds to that atmosphere. But I don't know if you guys, so about 2 hours ago, Matt Hardy from City AM published an article saying that attendance
He's
figures
got it in
for
for
the
rugby.
Premiership, are down 1,200 per game so far this season.
Yeah, he's got a bit of he's a dog with a bone a bit about slating rugby at the moment, and he has done a few articles along those lines. Although, to be fair to him, he did praise the URC the other day, so maybe he's a best league secret guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he is very much, that is his thing. Just last thing on Bath, I will say the other thing that helps is it's not a football town. So
Yeah, rugby town.
Bath,
That helps.
Bath, Gloucester,
Mm.
Northampton to an extent, less so Leicester these days, now that Leicester City have become a thing. These are rugby towns first and foremost, and they are the places where the capacity gets filled to the most, whereas you get like London has obviously plenty of football teams, and in Newcastle, football is a religion, and you couldn't meet one in 1,000 people who follows the rugby team. Anyway, to get back on track, we talked about the attendance at Musgrave Park there. So Munster put 40 points on Glasgow, and it was a game that they seemed to have won pretty early on. Did either of you manage to catch much of this?
That's one for you, Enda.
I caught most of the first half and a little bit of second half. It was such a fast start by Munster for me. Glasgow were still on that plane. I thought they were very poor. Like, I think Munster were really good in that first half, and I think they're a team that you enjoy watching now. Like the offloads, the passes, the variety to their game. They've got some really good young and upcoming players. They've got Tom Ahern, Crowley, Coombs, Casey. You can, like, just to name but a few. And again, it's great. Like, I don't know about you guys, but when you think about Graham Rowntree, you wouldn't maybe necessarily associate him with this offloading, fast-paced game. And I think it's brilliant. And I think he's a really popular figure down in Munster. I think that's really important. But for me also, just in that game, Glasgow were definitely off the pace. But yeah, Munster, I think they're looking really strong at the moment. I do still wonder if their front row is strong enough to go all the way in Europe this season. If we can still call it Europe, we probably can't. We'll call it EPCR, even though there's Europe in there, but any European in there.
I'm definitely calling it Heineken Cup.
Yeah, we'll just call it the Heineken Cup, or we refuse to follow that I word. Yeah. So I think but they have got Ollie Yeager in, who looks like a really good signing. He's Irish qualified, of course he is. So I think Munster were very good. Ulster not so much though. Just touch on that game. I think they lost 24 or 27-24 at home to Edinburgh. Did either of you guys get a chance to watch this game, or?
Oh, Jesus, yeah. I mean, I tried my best to sit through the whole thing of it. It's terrible. That's a team in real trouble. And I'm great, I suppose, student of psychology and sport, and recent academic stuff I've done has led me down that path a bit. It really looks like they are a crowd of fellas with no leaders, no on-pitch leaders. Dan McFarlane seems to be furious the whole time about the fact that the team didn't perform in training. Well, perhaps one should look at oneself, Dan, as the answer to that. You contrast that with the point you made about Graham Rowntree, who more and more seems to be becoming a leader. And you need to be a leader of men, particularly in those Irish provinces where they're so guided by the cult of the personality. And, you miss a couple of big personalities in the Ulster setup, and suddenly they are looking absolutely rudderless. I mean, they were trying to lose that game. And you feel really sorry for guys like Stephen Ferris and the other lads around him who have played and won trophies with Ulster and have to watch and commentate on this because they look abject and really lost. And for a team with the caliber of players they have, everyone has to stand up and take accountability, and people aren't. And you'd have to look at them and think, Jesus, they really contrived to lose it.
Yeah. And they've been going for a good few years now without, like, for a long time now without any trophies. So I think it's about time, they pull things together. And I know they've a massive injury list now at the moment. There are murmurings now, obviously, about McFarlane, and rumours going around about him, of course, but he's in contract with Ulster till 2025. I believe. So I don't think he's going anywhere anytime soon. But yeah, I thought those comments after the game were quite poor, talking about like you always look at yourself. Like you wouldn't hear Rog saying something like that. You certainly wouldn't hear Pete Wilkins, who's the current Connacht coach. He's excellent as well. I didn't know much about him until this season. I've listened to him now every week in the media, and he's really articulate. He's a really smart guy, and you can tell that players are playing for him. But yeah, we'll see. I don't see Ulster going anywhere this season, unfortunately.
And they've also signed Kitsov, who must be wondering what the hell he's walked himself into. Imagine that.
He's probably checked his bank account though, and he's probably got happy days.
Yeah. Can you imagine arriving into Belfast and it being dark at 4:00 in the afternoon? I mean, God love him. God almighty.
He's probably looking at Blair Kinghorn getting Edinburgh 100 grand from Toulouse and just going, oh, I'm over here. Right, last URC game then, Stormers versus Zebra. I didn't manage to catch much of it, but 31-7 to not to Zebra, to the Stormers. Stormers with their Springboks back. Manny was back, #Team Manny. And Willemse was back, got on the score sheet. I think you kind of look at it and go, with the context that you have to view the URC with now, with these South African tours, you'd say 31-7 isn't so bad, really. And this is like, you didn't get anything out of the game, but you have to say there's a lot of teams going to get beat by a lot more down there.
Yep. And that's testament to Zebra as well. Like they're on 11 points now at the moment, which is equal to what they had at the end of last season and more than they had at the end of the 2021 to 2022 season, which is just bonkers to me. But I think that shows how far they've come on. Like they've a win this season, they've a draw, and I think that's important. And this league to me so far this season has just been so competitive. But yeah, the Stormers do look off though at the same time. Like this, like I know that they were traveling for 4 weeks. Well, they had 4 games. I think it was at least 4 weeks. Yeah, they were traveling. So
yeah,
but they were probably on the road for longer than that. But I think we'll see. But I think we'll see now the South African teams as they play these home. Like even the Lions are putting massive scores up on teams. But I think we'll see the South African teams really now creep up that table. Maybe not so much the Sharks, but maybe that's for another pod.
So the South Africans are now going to be getting their second ever taste of European rugby as we go into that this weekend. I don't know about you guys. This feels like the least excited the rugby community has been for a European competition since I've been watching the sport. There's a lot of things that we could talk about, the reasons why. Maybe I'll just get a bit of a summary from each of you. So there's obviously the format, there's the changes of the South Africans being added, where we in the URC are loving it, but it doesn't seem like the English or the French have quite got their heads around it yet. And yeah, like I said, the number of teams who qualify is a big bone of contention. Catherine, for you, does Europe still hold that magic, or do you think no, this has lost its shine as we stand today?
Europe for an Irish fan, Europe for a Leinster fan will always have a special allure. If you're from a team that hasn't tended to compete well in Europe or has gone out in the opening rounds, it becomes one more thing. I'm not being mean. No, I didn't mean that about you. I was thinking about something like Gloucester. God,
he's going to drop off.
I know.
I was on Caelan's pod on Sunday, and they had all like Leinster and Munster and Ulster fans talking about when we won it in this year, when we got knocked out in the semi-finals this year, and I'm like, we got to the semi-finals of the Challenge Cup last year. That was good.
Yeah. When you start with a low bar, right? Sometimes that's the best thing. I think the demise of the home and away fixture has killed it. Like for 20 seasons, I would have leapt on the text from an insider at Leinster or within the Irish media press corps to say, CK, like, book your flights now for a flight to Brive or to Agen or whatever else. Jesus, you'd be so excited. Like you'd be counting down the days and researching your restaurants and what there is to do and where you'd stay and how you'd get there and who was going to drive. And that cachet as a competition, as a new competition. I mean, what was it, inaugural season 1997? You know, it's arrived at the advent of professionalism in the sport, and it brought a whole vista alive for people who would never have dreamed of going to France or provincial France or the south of England to watch their province or their team in a match. And that was always what was so unique about it. And to have this random fixture. And like, I'm friends with a lot of very, very knowledgeable rugby people, and people were looking at the fixtures for my team over the summer going, I can't make head or tail of it. We've Sale in Dublin, but not back in Manchester. And we've got La Rochelle on a Sunday afternoon at 3 o'clock in December. No one's going to that. No one I know is going to that, and who has a job anyway. Do you know?
Yeah.
And it loses something in its relentless striving for something that it isn't. I don't know what they're trying to construct, and I think there might be a little bit of post World Cup ennui, right? But everyone always got up for a big Heineken Cup fixture. And it was always in my circle, it was always somebody's birthday, or, some big event that was happening, or like the last Saturday before Christmas in Lansdowne Road. That game would relentlessly be a sellout.
Hmm.
So it's really weird to be approaching the weekend and to realise that I've got something on a Sunday afternoon. Was it? Oh God, yeah, it's Leinster playing La Rochelle, but I can't watch it because I've got something else booked. That's the first time in my life watching rugby that I have had this approach. So over to you.
Yeah, it's a death knell, isn't it, for your involvement with the sport? I talk about my experience with Formula One quite a bit on this, and there was a time in Formula One I would set an alarm at 5 a.m. to watch free practice, and now sometimes I don't even check to see what time it's on, and I just see the result. I'm like, oh, there was a Grand Prix today. Like, yeah, and it feels like Europe is getting a bit like that as well. Like, oh, that game was played. Wow. What about you, Enda? Challenge Cup friend. What is it? Did you get there a bit quicker, having not had the historical success that maybe the Leinsters among us have had?
Well, I'm kind of one of those unique Irish fans. Like I I support all the provinces just in a certain order. So Connacht is my number one team, Leinster's number two, Munster three, and Ulster fourth. Don't tell Kaelan about Munster. So like I like to see all the Irish provinces do well. So but you're dead right. Like, it doesn't feel like we've got Europe coming up this weekend. But from a Connacht fan's perspective, like, it's massive. Like, just for Connacht to be in the Champions Cup this season is huge. Got Bordeaux coming to town on Friday under the lights in the sports ground. I think it's really something to look forward to. And I think the fans will get behind them. And listening to some Connacht podcasts during the week and some of the media coming out and some of the press releases they've put out there, they want to make a statement on Friday. The players seem annoyed, the coaches annoyed, so I think it could be a great game. We'll see what kind of team Bordeaux sends over. Who knows? Because it's all about the top 14. So I think from a Connacht perspective, it's huge. But like, yeah, from an Irish rugby perspective, it does feel like it's lost that, and it just feels like it's this massive competition now that nobody understands. I love the South African teams being the URC. They're in Europe now. I don't know how I feel about that. I don't think I'd mind if there weren't just so many teams. Like, I don't feel like a lot of those teams at the moment who are playing this weekend are there on merit, which is a shame. I think it should be the elite teams in Europe playing each other. And like we've seen in the last season or two, teams with multiple losses get through the knockouts, and I think that's just apt for me. And it's going to be fascinating, I think, just to see what squads are put out this weekend. Like, I remember last season, the Bulls basically put out their second string team for European games. That they just prioritize the URC, which from a URC perspective is cool. But also they've also got the Currie Cup as well. But like, how are the South African teams going to manage it? Will you see them putting out, like, I think John Dobson might have said he might have hinted at the Stormers doing something similar this year. And I think, like, that's a shame if we're looking at that type of situation. I don't think you'll see any Irish team ever put out a second string squad. But yeah, it's definitely lost something. But you know what? Like, I just feel like it'll get interesting during the knockouts. And we'll probably all forget about this conversation about all the group games, and it'll be a great knockout. But I just think the English teams are not going to be there. Like, it's going to be between the Irish provinces and the French teams.
The top French teams.
Yeah. One good thing though about the Challenge Cup, which is pretty cool, like, a Georgia team, the Black Lions, are playing Gloucester this weekend. That's cool. And Zebra playing the Cheetahs. For a lot of people, they wouldn't be interested in that, but for me, as a bit of a rugby nerd, like, that's interesting. I love seeing the Cheetahs. Ruan Pienaar still playing. Like, that's cool. That's a bit different.
Yeah. Years after he left Ulster. Years after that, yeah.
Yeah. Still going.
So I am super excited for Gloucester going to Tbilisi to play Black Lion, because I think there is a more than decent chance that Black Lion win that, because they have
Imagine.
a lot of Georgian internationals who are at the World Cup there, and Gloucester are going to send the kids, and Gloucester's not kids team is doing very badly at the moment. So I reached out to friend of the pod, Francisco Isaac, to get a sneaky preview of this. And he essentially said, Hugh, I wrote an article for World Rugby. You should just go and read that to me.
Okay.
But he gave a non-committal that he's excited. He said that he thinks the Black Lion might win a couple of games. And as you just said, you only need a couple of wins to progress. So Black Lion could find themselves getting to the knockouts of this tournament, and how amazing would that be?
Oh my God.
That would
The Cheetahs made
allow-
it to knockout last season, like.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, so that's exciting. So I'm super excited for that game. That is probably the one thing that I am really intrigued by this time. But I just want to go back to a point that we kind of touched on earlier. You know, we spoke about the rotation of players and things, and you talked about there, Enda, what team is Bordeaux going to send over to Connacht, and we're talking about what kind of team Gloucester is sending over to Georgia. So this kind of comes back to our chat about the calendar, and we've seen reported by America's Oval, the other day, that the All Blacks are now getting up to playing 15 test matches next season. And what we're seeing now is, if we talk about limits for 20 matches for players as just hypothetical, that would mean that over half of those could be at international level. So it really feels like club rugby is really struggling for space to breathe. And I think Europe is really suffering from that we're trying to have this football style European competition. It just doesn't fit. We can't find space for it. And if we did want to go back to the old style pool format with the double headers, as you say there, when do we schedule those games? When is the opportunity to have them? Because we're trying so hard to not have URC games clash with internationals. So Catherine, I know this is a topic very close to your heart.
Mm-hmm.
The Northern Hemisphere calendar, as it stands, it just doesn't work. And I think it feels like that there are people on this half of the planet who are struggling to comprehend that, and how the Kiwis, for example, have very much got it sussed to suit them.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know my views on the World Cup and its original scheduling, and the fact that it sits in early autumn, and how that suits the three Southern Hemisphere sides, and it's borne out in the results. I think perhaps I might challenge the concept that it stopped working for Northern Hemisphere. I think it works really well for countries and clubs or provinces or franchises with a strong rotation policy at the base. And that gives, like, I don't mean to keep harking back to the Irish system, but I think it works for a reason. And that is a very strong rotational policy at the base. So whilst you're top flight or away at Six Nations or whatever, your kind of middle tier are being blooded in the ancillary competitions. Where that really falls off is where, for example, Wales, right, where there isn't that breed of academy type structure or lower middle tier ranking coming through. So the same players are rotated the whole time. And it's no coincidence that you look down to the list of those, whatever it is, 200 and something names of rugby players involved in the class action. Many of them are Welsh. So the same people have been played over and over and over. And when I talked earlier about New Zealand perhaps having the player rotational policy right, they can do it because that's the number one sport. Well, however long it stays that way is another moot point. But they've got enough rank and file coming through to populate the domestic leagues, whilst they send their top flight off with something to spare. That said, 15 tests in a calendar year for one side is negligent. And that's negligent from a health perspective and professional perspective, and probably an ethical and likely an insurance perspective.
Yeah, it is crazy. And I wonder if this is just trying to cram in as many games as they can before the Nations League starts, and then they might find themselves potentially limited. I will also point out that the only tier 2 nations that New Zealand are playing next year are Japan and Fiji, who are due to be added to the Nations League. So I don't know if we can refer to them as tier 2 for much longer. Kaylin, how about you? Do you feel like we're reaching it? Did I say Kaylin?
I've been called a lot worse, don't worry.
I'm so sorry, mate. It's because Kaylin's always
Yeah, look,
that main event monster, blah blah blah. You know what he's like.
It's a crazy amount of games, like when you think about it, and like like just to touch on what Catherine said, like for me, I've said this on this pod a few times, like the Irish system is the best way to go. We rotate, we look after our players, and the idea of Ireland playing 15 games is just wouldn't happen. Yet we can still fund 4 provinces really well, and we can retain all our talent. Like we don't like isn't it Wales to play that extra game outside the test window during the November period? We don't have to do that, and we don't have a massive population. Like we just do it right. And for me, this kind of just reiterates this point. Like it's just like, why would you play? Well, that's obvious. They're playing 15 games to generate loads of cash. Like I think I just saw that Barrett's been signed on till 2027, which is good news for New Zealand. Yeah. So see, that's going to cost them a heck of a lot of money. But yeah, that's it. Does seem like a bit of a money grab, and I just can't see how that's sustainable and how. I can't see us having ever a world calendar, like a club calendar. I just don't see it happening. Different hemispheres. Like it's hilarious looking at the RC each weekend. Now you'll see games in freezing cold temperatures in Cardiff and in Cork, and then teams are playing in 36 degrees heat in Pretoria. I don't know how it's I don't know. Like the calendar piece is just like I think for me it's a bit out of control now at the moment. And with Europe and with the domestic leagues potentially amalgamating, then you've got all these. Now we've got these nation leagues and everything. We have too many games with too many competitions.
Club World Cup in as well.
Yeah, we could argue with too many clubs. You've clubs going under. Like there's almost just too much rugby. Like people often refer to the NFL, but like it's one competition. Like we're never going to be at that stage. It's one country, pretty much. It's just. But I think Katsu, that's such a good point. I think that I don't want to be too doomsday in this, but like we obviously we have touched on litigation, we've touched on player welfare, all of that, and this crazy calendar. But like it's obvious that bigger squads and less games are like, or even maybe the same amount of games but just bigger squads. But then how is an English team going to afford that? If they have these benefactors and then that benefactor pulled out. I just don't know. Don't know where I went there, but anyway, here we are.
Well, let's continue the European theme then and do our roundup of all of the club results. So I'll take France first. So something we spoke about before we came on air was the Toulon hype train, which I am firmly on board of, and maybe even the conductor, or at least the ticket collector. So Toulon are now up to second in the top 14 with their 4th win in a row. They beat Pau, who were doing very well competing at the top up until now. Racing still hold the number 1 spot. So the question we're all asking is, are the real Toulon back? Or at least are the Toulon that won 3 back-to-back-to-back European titles back? We wait and see, but it's exciting to see what they can do in Europe coming up. There was a Stade derby as Francais beat Stade Toulouse, but Montpellier unfortunately picked up their 8th loss in a row. They sacked Richard Cockrell last week, and that doesn't seem to have worked yet. They're right at the bottom, and it doesn't look like they're going to be going anywhere. The only win of the season came in game week 1, which was against Rogers La Rochelle, who I believe did pick up a win at the weekend.
Oh, God. Yeah.
La Rochelle picked up a win just the weekend gone. I think it was against Perpignan, who are again in the relegation zone of the top 14. So anyway, Pro D2. So Vaughan are still top, despite their loss to Grenoble. This was covered in the Friday breakfast show, as this game was played on Thursday. Newly George North Provence, he's not actually playing for them yet, but he will join them next season, beat Normandy 45-24. Portugal winger Rafael Storti got 2 more tries for Béziers as they beat Montauban to go 4th in the league, but his international teammate Nicolas Martins did not have the same amount of luck as they lost their game in a thrilling 6-0 defeat. Checking the results for these Pro D2 games is always funny because you see some scorelines and like, oh, that looks like Tri-Fest. There's like 12 penalty kicks each. So it just download Flash Score and just keep track of the results. But Stuart Olding is still doing the job for Brive, which is nice. What about the English Prem, Ender? What's happening over there?
So Newcastle, unfortunately, are still winless. There have been a couple of rumors circulating. I did listen to the rugby pod this morning, and I don't want to really go into it because I saw immediately after listening to the pod, I did see Mark who is their media manager, come out and he is very annoyed. So there are some basic, from what I can gather, there are rumors going around about Newcastle that are unfounded. I think they're absolutely fine in terms of their financial stability. I just think it sounds like they just simply don't have the budget to have a competitive squad. So where to next for them? I don't know, but look, they're at the bottom of the log. Sale, I should say, are still on top despite a heavy loss to Quins. That was quite surprising. That one was like 36-3 or something at the end. Very surprising. Yeah. But Quins were at home. A changed Sarries team picked up a shock loss at home to the Saints. So that was a pretty big win for Saints, who were actually playing some really nice rugby so far this season. Gloucester, yeah, the big loss against Bristol. So Gloucester and Bristol are both really struggling, but Gloucester in particular, because they took 50 points. Some also rumours circulating about Pat Lam at Bristol, but I'd say they're unfounded as well, because he's in contract. Like, he signed a 7-year contract about 2 seasons ago.
Yeah.
So I don't think he's going anywhere. It's just, you never see a contract length like that, do you? Like, I've never heard of that
Bristol
before.
have got the money to pay him off, though, if they change their mind.
They do have a ridiculous budget, yeah. So we'll watch this space, but they do. It's what I love about Bristol is it seems like a proper rugby town. They do get massive crowds at their games, even though they're not doing that well, and they actually do play a really nice brand of rugby. But let's move on. We'll try to get through these. English Championship, Ealing lost, which is, you'd never hear this, especially in the champ. They lost to second from the bottom, London Scottish, but of course they're still on top. But Doncaster are applying some pressure, having beaten the Cornish Pirates. In the Premiership Women's Rugby tournaments, Saracens are on top with 3 wins from 3. Another big win in the London Derby away to Quins. And Tigers are sat at bottom with no wins from 3 games. And then in the AIL Division 1A in Ireland, Clontarf are still unbeaten and remain on top. They did have 1 draw this season, but the rest were all wins. Dublin University are still winless and are sitting bottom of the log as well. So I think that pretty much rounds up all the games from the weekend.
Do you want to talk us through or attempt to talk us through the TV guide now for Europe this weekend? So to let the listeners know, I got a voice note from Enda yesterday saying, Hugh, I don't know if I can do this anymore. It's impossible to figure out where all these games are being played, when they're on, and how people can watch them. And he had me checking things. He was like, can you look at this? Can you go on this website and find this out? So, Enda, over to you, mate. Have you managed to suss it out yet?
To an extent. Okay, here's the... Okay, so for Champions Cup, it's actually pretty straightforward. It's basically, if you have TNT Sports, happy days.
Which I do now. I have cancelled my Sky subscription and picked up a TNT, Discovery Plus subscription.
Yeah.
And it's actually cheaper by £5.
So that's good for fans of that. And then if you want to stream it in the UK, you can watch it on Discovery Plus. If you want to stream it in Ireland, you can watch it on Now. So that's good. But also there are some free-to-air players showing some games in the Champions Cup. So ITV and S4C in the UK, and then RTE in Ireland. So that's good news. But basically, if you want to watch the Champions Cup in Ireland or the UK, get TNT Sports, basically. Where things get a little bit tricky is the Challenge Cup. There are an insane amount of broadcasters at the moment. So you've got EPCR TV, you've got S4C, you've got Viaplay, you've got Premier Sports, and it kind of changes every week. So the EPCR have published their entire broadcast schedule for the group stages of the Challenge Cup, and as far as I can see, it's wrong. Even looking at this weekend, they have games in their guide that are supposed to be, like, there's one game this weekend the Ospreys are playing. It's supposed to be on Premier Sports in Ireland. It is not on Premier Sports, but it's in their guide. There are games being shown on their own streaming platform, which is really strange, that are being shown and aren't listed in their TV guide, which is really strange. So they are, like, according to their EPCR TV guide, they are showing these games, but in their broadcast guide, they're not showing them. I don't know. But basically, it's going to be tricky for the Challenge Cup this season. That, like, you are going to have to watch it on various different channels. But it seems like overall the bigger games in the UK will be on Viaplay. In Ireland, the bigger games will tend to be on Premier Sports. Maybe some of the, and then maybe the less popular games will be on EPCR TV, which is about €7.99 per game. But there will also be some free-to-air games in the UK on S4C. But yeah, let's just quick, to sum it up, both competitions start this weekend. And this weekend alone, there are seven different broadcasters, 10 different channels, and 8 different streaming platforms. So you'll hear all about it in our Friday morning pod, and I'll also get the guide out as usual on Thursday night or Friday morning.
So Catherine, you got a bit of a reaction there. €7.99 per game. That's almost a match ticket for some people. That feels like a piss take, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I kind of think of that as in terms of my Audible monthly subscription, or a few more quid becomes my Netflix subscription. Like, that is bananas. I'd love to speak to the commercial person at EPCR and wonder like where their intent lies.
Yeah,
So,
I think what they're trying
no
to do
season
basically
pass,
is to get team. Yeah, I think what the idea is just to get games that basically broadcasters don't want to show because they're probably not going to get the viewership. They want to get them out there. Like, for example, which is even more bananas, Dragons v Oyonnax is on this weekend on Saturday. It is being streamed on EPCR TV, and there will be no commentary. According to their website. According to EPCR rugby.tv, there will be no commentary, and the same for Perpignan v the Lions on Sunday at 1:00.
So the only people
and that will cost you $7.99 per game.
Yeah, £8. Yeah.
But I can see what they're doing. They're trying to make sure all the games are, available to watch, but they're not going to get good viewership on those games, especially when they're not really talking about it as well.
There was a solution 2 years ago when they decided to screw it up. It was all across one broadcast channel, and then they screwed it up again, and they went through it in a separate way, and they came back, and then we had 2 channels, and now we've got a myriad, and we've got to pay for each one.
Yeah.
Like, how shoot yourself in both feet?
Well, I do a Scarlet's podcast, and I'm gonna have to say to the guy who hosts it and say, I'm not sure I'm willing to pay £8 to watch this game if it's the only way I've got of watching it. Like you say, you'd think, oh, it's £8 for the season, right? Oh no, £8 for one game. Are you kidding?
For one game, extraordinary, isn't it?
Yeah.
God. Yeah.
And look, that might change. Like, they might release a pass. Who knows? Like, on their website right now, it just says no packages available, and you can just purchase each game individually.
There's a link that says get pass, and you click the link, and then it says no passes available.
And that nothing happens. Oh my God.
So yeah, it'll be quite but bizarrely, the big takeaway for me this weekend is, according to EPCR, they're showing the Ospreys game on Premier Sports in Ireland, and that is simply not the case, which I just think is bonkers that they'd publish a guide that's just completely inaccurate, and also have games on their own streaming platform and not put that in their guide. It's just bizarre. But look, the Champions Cup, I'm gonna get every single fixture out in a tweet this week as well. But it's a lot more straightforward. It's just the Challenge Cup might be a bit challenging to watch.
Sweet stories that you have for us, yeah. Gosh. Well, I mean, despite all my moaning, I'll still be watching half of it.
Yeah.
The thing is, they've got us. Right, should we call it a pod, guys?
Sounds good.
Okay. Thank you to everybody for listening. Thank you, Catherine, so much for joining us. It's been a real pleasure having you.
I loved it. And I'm sorry
about
it, but thank you so much. Thank you so much, guys.
Thanks, guys.